Hi, everyone. This is Zach Rubin, and I'm joined today with Greg McEwen for today's presentation on Essentialism. Thank you so much for joining with us today, Greg. And we had wanted to do this presentation with Greg on screen, but unfortunately, it seems like noon Eastern is the most common time that everyone wants to be having meetings and webinars. So we were having some issues with getting the video capture to work well. So we are just going to have the slides up, but Greg will be with us throughout. To introduce Greg a little bit more, Essentialism is one of my favorite business books, and I'm really excited for Greg to share a lot of his insights on how people can focus the most on things that matter. As we were talking before coming on live, we think this topic is really timely with everything going on with COVID-19. And I know a lot of us have some extra time to reflect on what's really most important. So we're going to do the presentation a little bit differently. Greg is going to maybe present more in the traditional sense for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then we're really going to open it up for a lot of Q&A for people to get into some of these topics around what's really essential and what does that mean, and really pick Greg's brain just given the current circumstances. So if you do have questions, please click the Ask a Question button, and we'll receive those and process through them with the time we have. And Greg's also been kind enough to make the first chapter of his book available for free for everyone. So you can find that in the resources section of the page. I'll give a quick introduction, and then we can let Greg take it away. Greg McEwen has dedicated his career to discovering why some people and teams break through to the next level and others don't. His New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller, Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less, is the focus of our webinar today and challenges core assumptions about achievement to get to the essence of what really drives success. And Greg is the CEO of McEwen Inc., which serves a range of clients including Adobe, Apple, Google, Facebook, Pixar, and Twitter. And his writing has appeared or been covered by the New York Times, Fast Company, Fortune, and Inc. magazine. He's also among the most popular bloggers for Harvard Business Review and LinkedIn's influencer group, averaging 1 million views or more a month. Greg, please take it away.
Well, it's so great to be with everybody. What is the context for this conversation today? It's we are living in the oddest of times. The status quo is being attacked. It's totally different day to day. We're operating in a VUCA world, which is, I'm sure many of you have heard, the time of, it's a military term for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That is our context, and the complication to add to all of that is that sometimes in that kind of environment, we can abandon the things that are most essential for more trivial things, for just worry, for fear, quiet panic even, as we feel overwhelmed by all that's going on. And so even though we want to do what matters, we actually find ourselves pulled quite away from that. My position is that we can make a different choice. We don't have to be consumed by the non-essential things around us, but we can choose to become essentialists in realistic ways, that we can figure out what matters now, right now, what to do right now. It can be our focus that we can choose to lead. And if we do that, we have every reason to hope that this time is a genuine game changer for us, a time of health, of happiness, of joy, of progress, which seems, of course, counterintuitive, but it's exactly what I have found to be true myself and in working with other people in times of volatility and uncertainty. Let me just back up one gear to give the general context of what essentialism is, and then let's jump right into how to apply this the most. So essentialism is the disciplined pursuit of less but better. It is based on a primary mindset which says most things are trivial, most things are noise. It's summarized by this idea that it's difficult to overstate the unimportance of practically everything. That most of the stuff around us is that, but there are a few things that are superbly important, so valuable, so critical, that they are themselves game changers. That if we could invest in those things, they would improve both the direction and trajectory of our lives professionally and personally. And so if you have that core mindset, if you look at the world through that lens, then suddenly it's like waking up to discover, well, I'm not, I thought my whole life I was in a coal mine, and I wasn't, I was in a diamond mine. So my whole strategy has to change. Suddenly you would start to do a few things really differently. In fact, if we could just go to the next slide, you can see sort of the value proposition of this shift. So you can either do many things averagely well, many of these things that are relatively unimportant. They can feel it, they can feel urgent. They can feel, out of fear, out of panic to do certain things, or to avoid them just by running away from them. But what I want to encourage someone to do is to really instead invest as much energy as possible into the things we can control, to the things we can do something about, into the things that will be valuable, in the short term and the medium term and the long term, and start making progress in this new reality. Stop wasting any time worrying about what we lost and what it should, how we thought things would be like. We've got to put all of that aside and start creating, inventing, reinventing, reimagining something even better than before. And this really is, and that's what the image on the right is about, is that you can break through to the higher point of contribution. And in fact, I would argue, and not out of an overly optimistic premise on my part, but I think deep realism, that times of volatility and uncertainty are in fact better for that than other times. That breakthroughs, as one of my mentors used to say to me, breakthroughs are almost always based upon break with. We break with something in the past in order to break through to the future. And so those breaks with the past can be internal, driven by our own conviction to do something different, or they can be initiated externally, where suddenly we find ourselves in a position we didn't expect to be in. But in either way, what we're talking about is making a new decision. Decide comes from the Latin to cut or to kill, and it means that when we make a decision, something has to be cut out, something has to die. And we have, I think, collectively now, broadly speaking, the global community have the opportunity to break with how things were done and build a newer world. And so there are really three things that you start to do spontaneously once you get this new mindset. And that's, so in the next slide, here there are these three things. You start to explore what is essential. If you believe a few things are supremely valuable and most stuff isn't, then you're highly incentivized go and find what those things are, what those few things really are. We are in this new environment. If you believe that in this new environment, this new circumstance, there are going to be a few things, a few diamonds, and your job is to go find them, then you're going to operate differently. You're going to use this time that you have to explore, not to hunker down. You hunker down at home, by all means, stay safe. Not a time for heroes in that sense at all. We've got to do that. Hunker down at home, yes, but don't hunker down mentally or emotionally, waiting for the status quo to reappear. I don't see that happening. I don't think that's realistic. So we don't have to waste our time on that. No, use this opportunity to explore what the next thing is. To me, the opportunity is truly immense if one has the right perspective. And I'm not, when I say that, I'm not being, it's not about being half glass full or half glass empty, right? It's not that. It's this question. It's what's in the water. It's seeing what's really there. Because, I mean, it's like this. I don't know if any of you have been fly fishing before, but if you go fly fishing, there's a trick that one can use. You can put on polarized sunglasses. Normal sunglasses won't do it. They have to be polarized, and it's because the way that polarized sunglasses work is that they block out the sun using these vertical lines, and those vertical lines directly mitigate the glare of the sun on the water. So if you have polarized sunglasses on, you can see under the water, which of course is a great advantage. You can see the fish you're trying to get to. So you get to see opportunity that was always there, but was hidden from view. And that's the idea here, that to explore what's essential is based on the assumption that there are really valuable things that may not be obvious at first, that other people may not be investing in. And if you just are reacting like everybody else is, you'll miss it with everyone else. Just because other people are rushing around doing something doesn't mean it's important. Just because other people aren't investing in something doesn't mean it's unimportant. So you become like this adventurer, this journalist, seeking out the story, seeking out the news, finding the thing that might be hidden. The fabulous story, you know, Nora Ephron, who's was a play. She wrote screenplays, scripts. She wrote the script for Sleepless in Seattle and lots of others. When Harry Met Sally and all sorts of clever scripts. But before she was quite famous for that, she was a journalist, and she got her journalism start in Beverly Hills High School, and Mr. Sims, if I remember right, was her teacher. And in their first class, 101 journalism, they're given an assignment. The assignment is to write the lead to a story, and in the story, he rattles off the facts. The teacher, there's going to be a large conference, educational conference. They're going to have the governor's going to be speaking. Then this expert will be speaking. It's next Thursday, and he just gives all of these facts, and everybody is to write the lead of that story, and they all do. He gathers them all together, and he starts to read them all one by one. They're all the same. I mean, the facts are in a different order, but they're all the same. Regurgitation of what he has just listed to them. So he goes through them all. He rips them up, puts them aside. He says the lead of the story is that there's no school on Thursday. And Nora, everyone said that was like a huge turning point in her journalism and in her writing career is that in every set of facts, in every set of noise, there is something really vitally important. In every set of noise, there is a signal. Our job is to find it, that signal in the noise, that diamond in the mind. You know, they're using different metaphors to get to the same point, which is that we need to create space to explore what really is essential. We need to create a culture in our home environment right now, whatever that home environment is, whether you're living alone, you're living with somebody, whether you have children, whatever the environment is, to protect that culture so that you're in a position to even be able to explore. That there's enough positivity and playfulness that this exploration I'm describing can even be done. This is really what I mean by explore what's essential. The second thing is that we need to eliminate the non-essential. If you believe that only a few things are essential and almost everything is non-essential, then you will want to eliminate the non-essentials. You want to starve it of your energy, of your focus. You do not want to spend your precious resources on the things that don't matter or don't matter much. You want really to try to either uninvest or eliminate altogether from anything that's 90% or below important, so that you can pour your energy into the, it's the 90% rule I'm talking about. You can pour your energy into those things that are 90% or above important. And this principle, this criteria is just made for the times that we're in. You want to put all of that precious energy you do have into the relationships that matter most, into the projects that matter most. There's a special project you've been putting off for a while. Could be a time to do it. For me, at least, I'm writing a new book. Been in the works for the last year, but this is a perfect time to really invest in it. So doing that deep and essential work, that's what you want to be doing. You want to siphon away as much of the energy as you can from the other things. The third area is to execute, is to figure out how do you make it easier to make progress on the things that matter most. How do you build routine that means you don't have to decide and redecide every single day what you're going to do? Again, that's a principle that's true in all times, but in these environments, for most people, their traditional routine has been seriously disrupted. The time that they would leave to go to the office, well, that's not there. Go to take their children to school, well, that's not there. Pick the children up from school, take them to these activities. Even watch a certain game that you plan on watching each week when your favorite team's playing. All of these things have been disrupted. And so it's vital that we build a new routine in this new environment so that we aren't exhausted through decision fatigue by 10 in the morning. And then we're overwhelmed after that. And so then we're, spending the day in non-essential ways. So this is really the context. The idea is that if you can focus on the things that really matter, then you have the opportunity to break through to the next level. And particularly what I would offer to you is this question, which is really essentialism at the cutting edge of execution. It's this. It's what's important now. What's important now? I think it's hard to come up with a more essentialist question than that. More relevant in more moments than that question. Not what was important a month ago. I mean, my goodness, for heaven's sake, a month ago, how different the world was. So it's not what was important then. It's not what was important even a week ago. Today's environment a week ago can be a completely different circumstance. The question is to keep coming back, to take a deep breath, to get into the present moment and to ask, what's important now? I learned that question from the head of the Highland High School rugby team, Larry Gelwicks, after watching a movie that I think is terrific called Forever Strong. And in it, it demonstrates tells the story of the winningest team perhaps in American history. They played, if I remember right, 326 games and won 316 of them. So they'd only lost, I think, 4 games in the last decade. But they're effectively an almost unbeatable team. And I was so taken with the demonstration of that I reached out to the coach and became friends with him. As I interviewed him and his past players and really became quite involved in trying to understand how the team operated the way they operated, this single idea kept coming up. What's important now? He said we tried to get people to have laser-like focus on the team, on the pitch and off the pitch. He said we don't want them thinking about the last play. If we scored a try, we still don't want them celebrating that. We want them right here. If we're winning, if we're up by 60 points on the scoreboard, I don't want them polishing the trophy. I want them right here, right now. We doing our very best in this moment, in this reality. I don't want them thinking about what the competitor is doing. It's hugely distracting. I want them playing their game. Think about how we in our own lives struggle with that as we get into FOMO, the fear of missing out, what other people are doing, and underestimate the power of the joy of missing out, so JOMO. And so this idea, this question, what's important now, where we clear out the past and we don't get all worried about the future, about what we can't control there, but in this moment, right now. I'm going to pause in a moment to open up your own thoughts. I'd like you to write down an answer to this question in the question area. Here's the question. What is something right now for you in your life, in this new environment, that is essential, really important, something that you know could either be a game changer for you or just vitally important for survival, for sustaining your life, that you are currently underinvesting in? Simplify that, go through it one more time. What's something essential that you're underinvesting in right now? I want you to think about that I don't want you to think about it. I want you to try to just not overthink it. Just give me an answer to that question in the comments section. What is something that's essential that you're underinvesting in right now? I just asked that question on an interview. I was being interviewed just, I think yesterday, the day before. And I turned the interview around and I asked that question. And the person said, they said, rest. That I'm just so, this idea that everybody's at home, twiddling their thumbs or whatever does not in fact turn out to be the case at all for this individual, for this leader. She said, I'm just in decision fatigue all the time. She said, normally I push myself to the limit and then I have vacations with my family, and that's sort of how I keep my equilibrium. And so, but she said, I haven't got any habits around, resting in the normal schedule of my life. And now with all these employees she's responsible for and this business that's so different, so in my view, at least permanently different than it was just a few weeks ago, it's overwhelming for her, as we all can appreciate. And so we worked together to build a couple of new habits. One is just at noon, she would go for a walk for half an hour, and we talk through how she can set that up and who she needs to get on board to support her to do that consistently, and also that she'll shut off her phone and computer at 4 o'clock. It used to be no problem. She would leave, come home, she would be present. She felt that she was quite good at that. But now work is at home. Home is at work. There's no natural boundaries, no physical boundaries. And so she needs to put that in place, build that routine in place. So why? Why is that so important? We talked about that together. Why is it so important? Because if she doesn't do it, she can't show up well for her family or for her employees. Make good decisions, make strategic adjustments, figure out how we're going to, what's important now. She can't do that. And if she can't do that, then every decision she makes and the wider team makes start to be suboptimal. And so you're becoming more non-essentialist. You're losing all the advantage. And why does that matter? Well, that mattered to her because this was like this work she's engaged in. She feels is part of like her mission in life. And so suddenly, together we could understand and see that taking a walk at noon, turning off a computer and phone at 4 was necessary conditions for her fulfilling her mission in life. That was sort of this new thought. What seemed like a sort of nice to have or almost frivolous, suddenly she could see how essential that was. Protecting our ability to prioritize is our highest priority. That's what we need to keep in gear. Now let's have some. Let's see what some of these answers have been here. We have somebody responded exercise. That's similar to what we just talked about. The term here, whether you're exercising, somebody else here, my Buddhist practice. Those are two examples of something where the key is to protect the asset. I worked with, actually, he's a good friend of mine who was Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. Tremendous capability. He started the first for-profit microloan company in the world, as I understand it. And that's such a smart thing to do because it just allowed them to scale what is such an important economically developmental asset to provide to people in extreme poverty. And so it's a really meaningful work. But as he traveled more and more and gave more and more, he forgot to protect his own spirit, mind, heart, body. And then in the middle of the night one time, he just woke up in bed. He said it was like a gunshot had gone off. He goes to bed, his wife's still asleep, everybody's still asleep in the house, he doesn't know what's happened. Then it happens again a couple of nights later, then it happens in the middle of the day. He goes to the doctor says, look, there's a lot going on, but really your system's shutting down here. You've got to go home, you've got to sleep, you've got to get well. He said, go home for 6 weeks and just rest. He said, I can't do that. He's a total overachiever. He said, I can't do that. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Watch this. I'll do it faster than you're expecting. Well, 2 weeks later, after having slept 16 hours a day, he just realizes, no, I can't do this. In the end, the long short of it is that he had to give up the reins of the company he'd started. They moved to an area that they could rest and recuperate together as a family. And all of this sacrifice and cost, he summarized, and it's his phrase, this is where I got the phrase from. He said, what I learned from all this pain, all this disruption was protect the asset that is you. So these are important things. Let me just share a few of the other answers that are coming in and see if there's something that seems to riff on here. Somebody writes here, a sense of stability. Yes, one of my favorite paintings you can look up online, it's called The Listener by James Christensen. I have it in my office. In fact, I'm looking at it right now. Is the painting of a young man sitting in the center, his eyes closed, which is illustrating that he's trying to listen. You can't quite show that in a painting, say the artist had him close his eyes, trying to listen not to all the voices around him, but to his own inner voice. In the painting, there's loads of people all around, and images of kings and queens and the heads of state. And Shakespeare's in there somewhere, I think. His own mother-in-law is depicted, and all these people trying to get attention. It's a great illustration of a sort of social media time we live in. And so in a condition that is so reactive, there's a higher value on creating stability yourself. So how about this as an easy way to start with stability? And there's lots to go into that phrase. We can't get into all of it here, but I have a executive friend at Apple, and he started his mindfulness journey by simply every time he would sit down at his own desk, he would breathe 3 times, 3 deep breaths. Just close his eyes, 3 deep breaths. That was it. But it grew and grew from that very tiny habit into something meaningful. And he has such centeredness. Whenever I talk to him, whenever I'm with him, and I'm really amazed at how the stability within him. So of course that inner calm allows him to then lead differently with his family and his business. Here we go. What else do we have here? We've got, I'm underinvesting in my prayer life. I appreciate you being honest about that. It's consistent with what we're talking about, isn't it? You know, I pray myself, and I'm absolutely, you know, for me, it would be intellectually dishonest for me to say, oh, it doesn't have an impact. I can see the impact within me. I can see it with other people. I think there's great power in it, and it's easy to skip that. Look at these other answers here. I've got my devotional time with God. Somebody writes spiritual, faith-based life. These are all along those same some of those same themes. I think this is one of the ways in which this new challenge can help us turn a negative into a positive. And just to be clear, a person who can turn a negative into a positive can never be defeated. So it's a great gift. It's a great capability to develop a particular kind of resiliency, because it's not just maintenance. It's not just maintaining our status quo. It's that challenge actually makes us better, actually makes us more capable, more able to deal with the future. You know, I wasn't planning on sharing this story, but a couple of years ago, year and a half ago, we moved. Actually, we moved. Yeah, 2-3 years ago we moved. And after we moved into a very nice area, beautiful areas, like it's built in the 50s, and that the whole world moved on, but nobody told anyone here. It's white picket fences. It's more horseway than roads. And all our children just seemed to thrive, and one of them particularly was always up trees and outside and catching lizards and playing with our dog. It just seemed so happy here. And then she turned 14, and everything seemed to slow down. She's slower to do her chores. She would answer us with, you know, more like one-word sentences rather than what used to be just voluminous. And we just thought, well, it's all pretty age-appropriate behavior. But then after a routine physical therapist appointment, the therapist said, and you know what, you should just see a neurologist because she failed this particular test, and that's unusual. And we didn't have to be warned twice. And what followed was a series of the most ambiguous, volatile weeks and months that we'd ever experienced. No neurologist could explain what was happening. They just shrugged their shoulders. I mean, the medical profession is, I won't say failed us in the sense that people weren't good or kind or trying. We really appreciated everything people were doing, but we just had no answers. And they couldn't even give us the beginning theory of a diagnosis. As her capabilities went almost to slow motion, it took her 2 minutes to write her own name. She couldn't answer anything without one sentence. Her one side of her body was suddenly not working, and on it went. And we realized we had two choices. We could either focus on what we didn't have. We didn't have the answers. We didn't have certainty. People trying to be helpful would send us articles all the time with the most awful diagnosis possible. And of course, based in just no real information. So it's just another random thing, we could just get consumed in that, the fear of it, the panic of it, the uncertainty of it, the volatility. We could have let that just consume us, sense destroyers, weaken us, weaken the culture of the family. That was one choice, and it was really tempting, an easy choice to go down. The second choice was that we could be grateful for anything that was going right, anything that was good, and build on that positivity. And that was our choice. And we quickly realized that really the only viable choice was the second, because if you choose the first, you don't improve anything, and you significantly weaken your ability to do anything to improve anything. So we chose the second. We did it so deliberately. We would be like just looking for something that was good, positive, anything we could say, be grateful for. I'm grateful for music, and we'd get around the piano, we would play together as a family, and we would sing together. We would be thankful for books, and we would read, and we were thankful for the medical profession, even with its limitations, and keep engaging and looking. We would be grateful for friends and reached out to them, let them know what was happening so that we weren't isolated. And what we observed was like a magical force taking place. It just didn't even take long at all. This gratitude begat gratitude. It was positivity begat positivity. And momentum grew out of that. And we started to see things open up. There's a neurologist, a specialist in pediatrics movement disorders, which is an unbelievable specialty. Had a 9-month waiting list, suddenly canceled 2 weeks, and we were with him. He was late, hours late for the appointment when we were there. And I was tempted to complain, but my wife said, no, even here, we're going to be grateful. I'm grateful that he's taking time with other people because he'll do the same once he's with us. And it was totally true. When he came in with his whole team, and they were totally different in their approach. Within days, our daughter was hospitalized, and we started to be able to see some progress. And it was a turning point. And we were grateful for that whole journey too. Here's one of the many things I learned from that experience. She had a significant recovery. It's not over yet, but even now we can feel grateful for this ongoing journey. Here's what I've learned. If you focus on what you lack, you lose what you have. If you focus on what you have, you gain what you lack. Have you not found that yourself? Have you not found that when you complain about things that you can't control, you just have more to complain about? When you start to be grateful, you start to find that there's just more to be grateful about. Good things come. I know we're riffing on this for quite a while, or I am, but Barbara Fredrickson did some great research explaining what we experienced in this incident. It's called the Broaden and Build theory, and it basically means that positive emotions are not just correlated with good decisions. It's not like, hey, I do lots of good things and then I feel positive. It's the other way around, actually. She found that as you generate positive emotion, like gratitude, it's causative and generative. It actually produces a better set of results because you suddenly open up, your options open up, your ideas open up. Instead of feeling freeze, fight, or flight, which is what happens as the negative emotions start to come in, as complaining and criticism and fear and panic sets in, our options, our sense of the options are reduced. When there's gratitude and positivity, our sense of options increase, so our creativity increases. Our social bonding with other people increases. So our resources, our personal resources also increase. And then from that, our deep reserves are rebuilt and increase, making us more resilient for the next challenge that comes along. This is an ongoing positive self-sustaining pattern. So I share all of that because I think it just has the power of relevancy right now. Let me now just open this up to any questions generally that you have. I have seen a variety of questions at different times through this conversation, and I could go back to some of those. We have lots of terrific things that have been shared, but I just wanted to open up specifically to that question. Okay, see what we have here. I see somebody has just commented here, I should spend more time with my kids. I work 2 jobs and trying to balance this new normal. And my sympathy goes out to you. That is a huge challenge, what you're trying to handle. You know, while I'm just waiting for other answers, other questions to come in specifically, let me just respond to something here that builds on what I was just talking about the essential nature of positivity and how it relates to this new normal. For a lot of people, they're suddenly, I mean, like everybody's homeschooling now. And we've homeschooled our children for the last few years. And so it's been less abrupt, this change for us, because although it was no easier to make the transition that we made, and we've been dealing with it for a long time now, the challenges associated with it, it didn't happen all at one moment, as it has for many people. And one of the things that we've learned, and that I would say the most essential thing, is not the curriculum. Strangely, in a sense, it's not the learning, although that's clearly important. What is most essential is to create this positive family culture. And so that people can start to do the learning in a natural way. The environment is the most important thing. And one of the things that we learned to do is we just created a video. This is one of our fun projects in the last week or two. One of our creative projects was to create a video as a family that we posted on LinkedIn, I think elsewhere as well, but certainly on LinkedIn if you want to go check it out. But a game that we play, it's the family star chart game. And it's not like your mother's star chart. It's different. And what we do is this. It's a simple idea. Together, we get together. I have 4 children. My wife and I get together with our children, and we decide on a reward or prize that we all want to do or have. One of the ones we did was go to see the movie Onward. We've had it before where we have, we do banana splits and a movie marathon here at home, and or come up with something. And you agree together. So you're now all motivated together. It's something that's going to build your culture. It's a positive thing when we get it. And underneath, a very simple star chart. There's no names on the star chart. There's just a number of stars. And the number of stars goes up depending on how big the reward is. If it's something really significant, then there's more stars. If it's something, something small, then you have less stars. Whenever you catch anyone doing the right thing, you give them a star. There's no stars. You don't take the stars away. It's all positive. You cannot, bad behavior, you don't lose a star. It's all positive. And so it means that there's no competition between the children. Anyone gets a star, everyone wins. And it has just generated this sense of positivity. And whenever we start to get negative, our children will come to us and say, look, can we play this game again? Anyway, there's this video here. Let me just, let me write down some of these questions here that we have here. Here's the last one here. Said, thank you for sharing your personal story. I appreciate that. Many of my loved ones have chronic issues with anxiety to physical pain. Do you have any advice for these people who might have a harder time looking for the silver lining? Yeah, I mean, I think that specifically gratitude rather than just general positivity is like the California roll of sushi. Like when sushi was supposed to be introduced into the US, it wasn't doing well, and so they created something that didn't exist in traditional sushi, the California roll, and that was like palatable for people, and so people could eat that, and they could, they could get into the rest of the food from that. And I think that gratitude actually is that for positivity. You don't just have to suddenly start being positive. You just begin the phrase, look, I am thankful for, and or even ask the question, what is anything that we are thankful for? You can do it with them together. What is anything we're thankful for? I've done this with our own children in the midst of them being really grumpy. Like, that's why I'm doing it, in fact. And they will say something like this: well, I am so thankful that Dad is playing this dumb game, right? Like something like that. And what's unbelievable about the power of gratitude is it doesn't matter. Even a cynical statement of gratitude, even a grumpy statement of gratitude, is self-propelling and causative for something more positive. It almost always makes them or me or someone else in the family laugh when they do it. So you're already feeling better. And then you build on it, something else. The other day, my son was grumpy and I was asking him to do it. Well, actually, we'd established a new rule, which is that after we complain, you have to say something you're thankful for. And well, the first thing you notice when you do that is you complain a lot. I noticed that about me, as I complained more than I realized I did. And as I made that trade-off, right, that connected to it, so I was doing it with my son, and he said, I am grateful, fine. He said, I'm grateful for 3 grains of sand. We weren't at the beach or anything like that. We're in isolation like everybody else is. And so then a few minutes later, he had to do it again because he complained again. I am grateful for 8 bits of sand. And you know what? It didn't matter. It was funny. And we started to be able to move into that. So I just think you start with that question. What is something you're thankful for? And the brain is like, Google search engine. If you ask a new question, it comes up with a new answer. So I just think you start anything with a point of gratitude. And what you start to find is there are way more assets that are available. And this is where this fits in with the essentialism model is explore what's essential. Gratitude is an accelerator to discovering what is essential because it points out to you assets that you didn't see before. It points out to you things that are important that you might have been blind to now. Here we go. Let's hear another one of these things here. If you don't have good boundaries of other people who have demands on your time, how do you get other people to see that your time is important too, to do things that are valuable to you? That comes from Anne. Well, I wish I could follow up with you easier right now to get a little more information. But look, it depends who you've got the boundary challenges with. That's exactly how to approach this. There is, if it's a home challenge, then I would recommend a book by Eve Rodsky called Fair Play. And this is Reese Witherspoon is one of her favorite books, and sent to me by Eve because it's really complementary with Essentialism, and she read Essentialism. So it's a fun sort of collaboration here through the ethos, and this is about how to set up a system of better balancing roles between you and the significant other. That's a home solution. In terms of a work solution, I just think it's reasonable to have the conversation, and I think that Corona provides that opportunity. You simply say, look, in this new reality, I get that this is all, we're in unusual circumstances. We need to have some boundaries. Let's come up with some reasonable routines that allow me to be able to be focused on one thing at one moment and not just to be on call 24/7, because I want to provide great service to you. I want to be able to serve you and help you, and this is what's going to be necessary for that to be able to be good and positive and workable. Boundaries, if you don't set boundaries in this environment, there won't be any, there won't be any natural bounds between work, between home, between, weekends. There's no weekends. One can argue, what does it even mean? We lose track of the day in comparison to before. So you've got to create now new boundaries. And there's a great story in Essentialism. Like I came across it from it's by Dr. Cloud, about a conversation he had with mother and father who were really concerned about their drug-addicted son, and he's not taking responsibility, he's not keeping a job, all of this, he's living at home, and he's not there in the appointment. The mother and father and he are there having this conversation, he's not there. Well, where is he? Well, he doesn't think he has a problem. And he finally, Dr. Cloud says, I think he's right. He doesn't have a problem. And they're like, well, what do you mean he hasn't a problem? Of course he has. Listen to all the things we just said. He said, no. He said, you've taken all his problems from him. You're taking responsibility for all his problems. Then it's like looking out of the window and seeing your grass. Your grass is all brown and dying. Your neighbor's grass is all green. And the reason is because your sprinklers are spraying in the wrong direction. They're spraying your neighbor's yard. When your neighbor looks out the window, they don't have a problem. You have a problem. And if that's your son, he doesn't have a problem. You've got to let him have a problem. You've got to let his grass, get a little rougher so that he can make some progress. So this idea of negotiating boundaries. Oh, I'll tell you what I have in front of me right now. This is a good little way to go with this. One of my daughters, in fact, the same daughter I was sharing about earlier on, I was trying to persuade her to write, to read a certain book one day. It was a good book, and I thought she could read it that day, and she wasn't wanting to do it. We didn't have an argument or anything. It wasn't awful, but she said that she wasn't going for it. And then I went into my office, got on a call, something like this, what we're doing right now, and she slipped a note under my door, and I have the note in my hand right now. Listen to this note. And think about how it affects boundaries. She was 14 years old when she wrote this. Here it is. She writes, I already expressed my unwillingness to read this book, but I'm willing to make a counteroffer. I am not willing to read it all in one day today, but I'd be happy to explore the possibility of reading it in the future over the course of a few weeks. I believe it would be best to wait till the end of my literature assignment. If you would like me to read this book in place of a separate assignment and over the course of a few weeks, I'm sure that can be made possible. I mean, I've shared that a couple of times now with live audiences. And whenever I've shared it, the audience gives a spontaneous round of applause, which kind of always surprises me. That's the kind of rare thing in those moments. And so we dig into, well, why? What is it that led to that? And there's so many lessons I think that can be garnered from that simple little note. But it's respectful. It's setting up the actual trade-offs. Look, the reality of trade-offs is a necessary part of all negotiation. There are trade-offs. So let's talk about them instead of pretending they don't exist. Let's be honest about them so that we can actually go forward in an honest way. I think that story is a good one. Okay, let's read the next question here. Can you touch on some tips on how to eliminate non-essentials? It's great in theory, but personally hard to strategize what takes priority for some people, e.g. the desires of others versus your own in the workplace. And look, this is I mean, the story I just shared is relevant to that, I think. But I want to emphasize, first of all, that problem precedes essentialism. I'm saying something obvious, but But the problem of people having too many things to focus on and it's competing is already existent. What essentialism does is it draws attention to the fact that we can't actually prioritize everything. So it encourages us to have the conversation that always has to take place if you don't want to just be going in a million different directions. So here's what not to do. What's not to do is to just simply announce, this is my priority, too bad for the rest of you. I didn't write a book called Noism. This book is Essentialism. What's essential? What I would encourage you to do is to have the conversation, to raise the question. Look, we have many, many things we could focus on. Can we talk about what we think are the most important things to focus on now? And that's not a one-time question once a year. I think it's pretty much the question, close to the work of life, and to not simply assume that what everyone is doing and everyone is recommending that we do is in fact been thought through deeply. I think it's often the case when I ask that question to people when I'm facilitating conversations with teams, that people don't know the answer. They do not know what is the priority right now. So I would just encourage you to think about it as an ongoing conversation. It's a collaborative process. It's not something you dictate, and it's something that can be negotiated. So remember basically this, that it's not a polite yes or a rude no. It's not that binary choice. That's a false dichotomy. There's also this third alternative of negotiation. And that's not, as I say, a one-time thing. It's an ongoing, multiple things that we can do. Okay, let me read this next comment here. I hear you say that every moment is an opportunity to practice gratitude, but another message I'm picking up on is that every moment, particularly moments of uncertainty, is an opportunity to learn something new about ourselves, about each other, about the world. This new data aid our exploration, elimination, execution. Is that what you're saying? And if so, do you have suggestions for how we can break through the fear brought on by volatile environments to foster our self-awareness during this time? Yes, I think that is what I'm saying. There's an ongoing process. Essentialism is a way of thinking in every moment. It's not something you store up for, one day a year, some executive offsite meeting that you occasionally do. It's that you're taking on a new way of being. You're taking on a new, almost a new identity in a sense, a leadership identity. You become an essentialist, and you're scanning your environment. Yes, it is learning. It's a particular focused learning. You are scanning and looking for what really matters. Not just general learning, what really matters. What's the most important thing? You believing that in every new set of data, there's one or two things that are critically important. In terms of this, the second part of your question, how do you break through the fear? I think one of the things you do is you recognize that if there's fear, basically you can assume, not 100% true, but you can pretty much assume that the fear itself is a non-essential thing. That doesn't mean that preparation for possible problems is a non-essential thing. Of course, we should be preparing. But if you're simply fearing, if you're simply panicking, just distrust that. Just say, okay, well, I'm not going to spend any time on that. What is something I can be grateful for? What is something that is going right? What is something I can build on? What assets are here? What potential is here? What opportunity is here? I think that's what I would recommend. Is whenever you feel fear, say one thing you're thankful for, one thing that you're grateful for. Okay, I'm looking at the time all of a sudden, and maybe I'll just do this. I'm sure some people will. I just have one final story I want to share that puts it all together, and it's the story of a man who Actually, it's the story of someone who almost became a barrister in England, but then didn't because he had a family emergency come up in South Africa. He goes to South Africa. He kicked off the train there because he was in first class and it's the middle of apartheid. He decides to take on the law. Talk about a systemic problem. You've got apartheid that he's trying to take on, this tremendously complex system. And it takes him 23 years to succeed in changing the law. And he goes back to India, home of his birth, but not a place he'd been living because he'd been in South Africa. And people are waiting for him at the train station. They want him to run for office. And he's trying to work out how to help them. Because why they want him to run for office is they want him to kick out the British and the colonial rule. And it's such a complex system with so many power issues. He's trying to work out what's important now. What is the thing that's going to make a disproportional difference, an impact, amidst all of these different levers, all of this changing, even at that time, 300 million people. And what he decides to do is he takes a year to listen. And he travels around India trying to understand what is it that will help to change the power structure, to empower the Indian people away from the British. And he finds an answer that's infinitesimally small, infinitely important. It was salt. The British controlled the production of salt, and if you can do that, you control the entire, production of bread and the whole food chain. And so it was from that idea that the idea came to him to walk across India in the demonstration of civil disobedience and made salt at the beach. It became known as the Salt March because 600,000 people followed him. And this is a key turning point, leverage point in shifting the circumstance that they're in, and of course leads eventually to independence for the largest democracy in the world. It tilted the balance of power. There were many other experiments, essentialist experiments along that way, but that was a critical insight. Similarly, in our own lives, we need to be looking for the salt. What's the salt? What's the thing that matters in this new environment? What's the thing that's going to matter? One more emergency he dealt with, we're talking about Gandhi, in Gandhi's life, is that his grandson was still living in South Africa and got beaten up by a gang there for being too black. And then later got beaten up by another gang for being too white. I know about this story because I interviewed the grandson, Aaron Gandhi, and he told me about his experience. He said, when this all happened, I was so angry. I mean, for him, it wasn't a global thing, but for him, he was dealing with volatility and uncertainty and fear and panic and anger. And his grandfather had the presence of mind to say, look, you just come and stay with me. And he did that. And he said, what my grandfather did is he listened to me for an hour a day for the next year and a half, which to me is a breathtaking illustration of essentialism in practice. With all the pressures, with all of the noise, I mean, think of what Gandhi must have been going through with that many people, heads of state and politicians, and the threat of war going on all the time, this sort of noise that was going on. And he has the presence of mind to notice not only the salt in the salt story, but that his grandson needs to really to be listened to, and that is the priority now. That's what's most important now, and to do that in that routine way is an evidence of the sort of internal discipline, the disciplined pursuit of what was essential, instead of the undisciplined pursuit of the non-essential. So how does the story with Gandhi end? Of course, we know independence. When he died, the U.S. Secretary of State, General Marshall, said of him, here is a man who has shown that simplicity is more powerful than empires. And Einstein is said to have said that generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this will ever in flesh and blood walk upon this earth. So the point I'm trying to make is that we don't have to be Gandhi. That's not the point. The point is that we can choose to focus on what matters now and have a disproportionate impact in our own lives. That even in a time of ambiguity, of volatility, of uncertainty, we can focus on the things that really are going to make a difference. And they might not, they won't just restore the status quo. That's just not useful thinking. But they can help propel us towards a higher point of contribution that was even possible before. There is, even in this challenge, some of the calamity, genuine, deep opportunity. And I think that is important. In fact, yes, I would say, and I'll end on this, that is essential. So thank you very much. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for wanting to learn. Thank you for wanting to apply essentialism. And I do hope that our conversation is useful in hopefully small and simple ways to help create something even better. Less, yes, but better. Thank you.
Greg, thank you so much for the time today and for all the stories. I think all of this is, again, more relevant now than ever. Again, the first chapter of the book is available. People can feel free to click on the link there to check that out. And several people asked in the questions if the recording would be available. They want to share it with others. Absolutely. And an email will go out likely at some point tomorrow with that link specifically. So check your inboxes for that. Greg, thank you again so much. We really appreciate having you on today. And everyone, be healthy, be safe in this uncertain time. Thank you.